we're done.
Yeah.
And then they go from 11, scared men, because Judas commits suicide, scared men in an upper room, to completely overhauling the Roman world in only a couple hundred years because of this claim that they say they saw Jesus resurrected. Like, there's something different that goes on there, that they're like, this is a miracle, right? Dead people don't usually rise from the dead. But the chances of Jesus surviving the crucifixion, I think, are narrow to none. And the chance of him appearing 3 days later completely fine. I mean, if the first thing you do, if you survive a crucifixion and then you go and you find your disciples, the first thing you say is not, peace be with you. It's get me to a hospital. Well, I think, so as a historian, I do think it is a historical question. You have a guy who objectively lived, he objectively died, and then individuals close to his inner circle claim that they see him not dead.
Right.
Again.
This is a highly unusual activity.
Highly unusual.
Right. So
in this conversation, world-renowned podcast host Joe Rogan sits down with Wesley Huff, a Christian Bible scholar and historian who has dedicated his life to studying ancient manuscripts and biblical texts. Joe challenges Wesley on some of the most fundamental claims of Christianity, pressing him for real evidence and historical credibility. Rather than avoiding the challenge, Wesley responds with clarity and calm reasoning, presenting historical facts that even skeptics find difficult to dismiss. Along the way, I will share 2 brief commentaries to help you think more deeply about the bigger picture and what this might mean for your own journey.
Wes, very nice to meet you.
Joe, pleasure.
So I, like many people, was introduced to you because of the debate that you had with Billy Carson.
Quote unquote.
Joe begins by acknowledging how he first discovered Wesley through a viral debate that captured the attention of millions online.
It's one of those things where it's very unfortunate when people get caught with their pants down. And I'm not an expert in many things, but the things that I am an expert on, you could wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and ask me about those things. And I go, oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
Yeah.
Joe makes an important distinction here. True expertise is not about memorizing facts. It is about having such deep knowledge that you can explain complex topics at any moment without preparation.
Like martial arts or comedy, I could give you an expert version of reality. It seems like he does not have that, and he is a wonderful talker, and it's a lot of fun. I like watching his videos. I love all that ancient history stuff, and even the most ridiculous tinfoil hat aspects of ancient. It's fun.
It's entertainment.
But I know that there's a difference.
Here we see Joe's balanced perspective. He enjoys entertainment and speculation about ancient history, but he recognizes there is a clear line between what is fun to consider and what can be verified through rigorous scholarship.
Well, it's interesting you say the expert thing, because I literally was asked to do it 24 hours beforehand. So I had like the least amount of preparation going into it, and I was okay with that because I'd listened to Billy Carson. Well, and I'd listened to the stuff he'd said. So I knew enough about the ways that he'd articulated things about the ancient Near East and the Bible and Christianity to know enough that his level is pretty surface.
This reveals something crucial about Wesley's expertise. With only 24 hours' notice, he felt confident enough to engage in a public debate. When you truly understand a subject at its deepest level, you do not need weeks of preparation. The knowledge is already there.
The problem is to really delve into these subjects. It takes a tremendous amount of research, years and years and years of research. You really have to know what you're talking about. Most of us don't.
Well, and especially with languages.
Yes.
Like, we didn't get into it. I hoped to have, in our initial conversation, kind of pressed him a little bit more on the more overt things he'd said about like Greek and Hebrew and Sumerian, because I've studied a number of ancient languages, and when you study the languages, you realize the complexities of these things.
Wesley has invested years studying ancient languages, manuscripts, and historical contexts. This depth of knowledge gives weight to his conclusions. When someone claims expertise but has not done the work, it becomes apparent very quickly.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian home. My parents were missionaries. So I was born in Pakistan and spent a portion of my childhood in the Middle East with my parents working in Amman, Jordan. And then we came back from the Middle East when I was pretty young. And so I grew up in this very diverse home in the sense that my mom was a missionary kid who grew up in India. And so we had a lot of worldview kind of perspectives represented in our home. Like I often say, we had the Bhagavad Gita and the Book of Mormon and the Quran on the shelf.
Oh.
Wesley was not raised in an isolated religious bubble. His family exposed him to multiple worldviews and religious texts. This gave him a unique foundation for examining claims about Christianity with both faith and critical thinking. Now we arrive at the core question of the conversation.
So, what is your personal belief when it comes to the resurrection? What do you think happened? Do you have a belief, or do you just try to interpret the text and try to see what is the message?
Joe cuts straight to the heart of the matter. The resurrection is the central claim of Christianity. If it happened, everything changes. If it did not, then Christianity stands on a foundation of sand.
Well, I think so. As a historian, I do think it is a historical question. You have a guy who objectively lived, he objectively died, and then individuals close to his inner circle claim that they see him not dead.
Right.
Again.
This is a highly unusual activity.
Highly unusual.
Right. So,
Wesley's approach here is fascinating. He does not begin with theology or faith. He begins with history. What can we actually verify? First, that Jesus existed. Second, that he died. And third, that his closest followers claimed to see him alive again.
but it's hard when you're dealing with illiterate populations, you're dealing with thousands of years of time, you're dealing with an oral tradition, and then you have us sitting here talking about it in 2024, trying to figure it at the end of 2024, trying to figure this out. Literally the end.
Yeah.
Last couple of days.
Joe raises the challenges of examining ancient history. We are separated by thousands of years from these events. How can we possibly know what really happened?
It's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
And I get that.
Wesley acknowledges the skeptic's position with respect. He understands why this claim seems impossible to modern secular minds. But he does not stop there.
But we've already talked about the fact that we don't think that the only thing that exists is matter and motion. We as in
Right.
you and I, right?
Right.
Like, we believe that there's something else going on in this world that's a little bit crazy.
There's something else.
And
yeah.
and that to, I think, exclude that, I think excludes something that you're kind of putting blinders on
Yeah.
for.
This is a key moment. Both Joe and Wesley agree that reality is not purely materialistic. There is something more. And once you accept that possibility, the resurrection becomes worth examining rather than dismissing outright. Here is my first commentary. What makes this conversation particularly compelling is how Wesley grounds his argument not in theological assertion, but in historical methodology. He treats the resurrection the same way a historian would treat any ancient claim, by examining the sources, the timing, and the context. Consider what he is presenting. We have multiple independent accounts written within the lifetime of eyewitnesses. We have hostile sources that confirm key details. And we have a movement that transformed from a handful of frightened disciples into a force that reshaped the Roman Empire. The question is not whether we can prove the resurrection happened with scientific certainty. That is not how historical inquiry works. The question is whether the evidence is strong enough to warrant serious consideration.
And you do have, I mean, you're right in terms of all of these ancient conventions and the ways that things were spread around. But the Gospels are written in the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. And they're written in this period of time where you have groups of individuals who could have fact-checked those things. So,
how do you fact-check someone coming back from the dead?
Well,
How many people saw his body, right?
Well, Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once.
400 people saw the crucifixion?
No, saw the resurrected Jesus. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says that Jesus appeared to the disciples, and then he appeared to 400 people all at once.
Joe asks a practical question. How would ancient people verify such an extraordinary claim? Wesley points to Paul's letter to the Corinthians. Paul claims that over 400 people saw the resurrected Jesus at one time.
I mean, if we read the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Luke and Acts, so same author wrote these both documents, he says that Jesus was walking around teaching them for 40 days after he was resurrected from the dead. And so
the claims are not vague or mystical. According to the sources, Jesus did not just appear briefly. He spent over a month teaching his followers. This was not described as a vision or a hallucination. The accounts describe physical, tangible encounters.
These are written within a time period when you have people who would have seen Jesus' ministry, who were there, say, at something like the feeding of the 5,000, who could have been able to verify or debunk some of these things that are being said. And you go from a bunch of scared guys who, because Jesus wasn't the only messianic figure who arose and claimed to be the Messiah.
Right.
There were a number of individuals both prior to and after Jesus, but they die and the movement dies with them.
This is perhaps one of the most compelling arguments Wesley presents. History records many would-be messiahs. When they died, their movements collapsed, their followers scattered, yet Christianity exploded after Jesus' death. Something happened that transformed terrified followers into bold proclaimers who were willing to die for their testimony.
Do you think it's possible that he didn't die? And do you think it's possible that they thought he was dead? Because that does happen. There was actually a case very recently where a guy was about to be harvested for organs. They thought he was dead, and this guy started moving again and came back to life.
Joe raises a reasonable objection. Medical mistakes happen even today. Could Jesus have simply survived the crucifixion?
It's a very, very bizarre case because his family had been told that he was going to be harvested for organs. They were preparing for that. And this guy comes back.
Yeah, I mean, we know a lot about Roman crucifixion, and we
Pretty
know
brutal.
that, and we know that they did their job well.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, if you look at, say, very skeptical biblical scholars, like non-believing, atheist, agnostic Christian scholars, they will say if we can know anything about Jesus, like they'll cast a doubt on a lot of the things that we read about in the Gospels in terms of the actual historical Jesus of Nazareth. They'll say one thing we can be sure of is that he died by crucifixion.
Wesley addresses this directly. Even the most skeptical scholars accept that Jesus died by crucifixion. The Romans were experts at execution. Their soldiers knew how to verify death.
Under Pontius Pilate. Because we have not just multiple attested documents that we refer to as the New Testament, but Roman and Greek and Jewish writers refer to that claim afterwards and talk about the fact that you have this guy, and it's mocked within earliest Christianity.
The evidence comes from multiple independent sources, not just Christian writers, but Roman and Jewish historians who had no motivation to support Christian claims.
So one of our earliest, in fact, not one of, the earliest depiction of Jesus on the cross is called the Alexamenos Graphido. And it's probably from the end of the first century. And it's it depicts an individual with their arms raised in an act of worship worshiping a man with a donkey's head who's being crucified.
Whoa.
And right beside it, it says, Alexamenos worships his God in Greek.
Whoa.
And it's mocking, right? Because crucifixion was for the lowest of the low. It was for like slaves. In fact, if you were a Roman citizen, you were banned. It's interesting. We know a lot about crucifixion, but crucifixion was seen as so disgusting. I believe it was Cicero who said that like the word crucifixion shouldn't even be on a Roman man's lips. Wow. I mean, the word excruciating,
Right.
X is off of in Latin, and cruce, off the cross.
Oh,
so that's where we get that word, is because this was designed to humiliate, and it was designed to be as painful as possible.
Wesley provides historical context that many may not know. The word excruciating literally means from the cross. The Romans designed crucifixion to be the most painful and humiliating form of execution imaginable.
There's actually a really good article done by JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, which was done by a number of, I think it was in the 70s or the early 80s. It was done by a group of biblical scholars and then medical professionals. And so they looked at the conventions of what we do know about Roman crucifixion, and then they looked at the descriptions in the gospel to try to figure out, okay, if we could diagnose how Jesus died, how would he have died? And so they basically came up with this idea that he probably asphyxiated to death. You kind of drown in your own blood.
Medical professionals have studied the crucifixion accounts and concluded that survival would have been essentially impossible. The physical trauma was simply too severe.
But the chances of Jesus surviving the crucifixion, I think, are narrow to none. And the chance of him appearing 3 days later completely fine. I mean, if the first thing you do, if you survive a crucifixion and then you go and you find your disciples, the first thing you say is not, peace be with you. It's get me to a hospital.
Wesley makes a practical point with a touch of humor. Even if Jesus had somehow survived, he would not have appeared healthy and whole 3 days later. The injuries from crucifixion would have required months of recovery, not days. Here is my second commentary. What strikes me most about this conversation is that Joe Rogan is not an easy audience. He has interviewed thousands of people. He is known for pushing back, for asking uncomfortable questions, for not accepting easy answers. And yet, as this discussion unfolds, you can sense his genuine curiosity. What we are witnessing is a model for how these conversations should happen. Wesley does not dismiss skepticism. He welcomes it. He treats Joe's questions with respect and responds with evidence rather than emotional appeals. For those who consider themselves skeptics, this conversation offers something rare, a chance to examine the claims of Christianity on historical grounds rather than purely philosophical or emotional ones. And for believers, it provides a framework for how to engage with doubters, not with condemnation, but with patient explanation and genuine dialogue.
Right?
Do they have them back then?
No, not really.
Also, are we entirely certain of their measurement of days?
So this is an interesting question because of the differences between when the Gospel of John says Jesus died compared to the Synoptics, because John appears to be using the Roman convention of counting time, and the other Gospels, when they describe the timing, appear to be using the Jewish ones. And actually, if you correlate between the two, they match up pretty well. So the thing is, with Jews, any part of a day was considered a day. So 3 days and 3 nights becomes almost an idiom for any part of that day is the day. So if Jesus...
Joe asks about the timeline. Were they measuring days the same way we do? Wesley explains the differences between Jewish and Roman timekeeping conventions and how, when properly understood, the accounts actually align.
Yeah.
Listen, Wes, this is such an awesome conversation, and I'm sad that it went down the way it went down with you and Billy, but the good thing out of it is that a lot of people became aware of your work, and it's such exhaustive work. It's really amazing what you've done. Thank you so much for these gifts. We will find a great place for them on the wall here. And thanks for, and let's do it again. And I would love to do it with you and someone who disagrees too. I think it would be a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Joe's closing words reveal something important. Despite coming from a skeptical position, he recognizes the value of Wesley's scholarship. He is not dismissing the claims. He is taking them seriously. And he wants to continue the conversation.
Yeah, I think it would be really cool.
This has been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Oh, tell everybody how to find you, how to find Apologetics Canada.
Yeah, so I work for a national not-for-profit and in Canada that is an organization. We want people to have an intellectually robust and a biblically grounded and a faith. We want people to know what they believe and why they believe it. And so,
no matter where you stand in your own faith journey, one truth remains clear. Virtually every historian, scholar, and archaeologist, Christian or not, agrees that Jesus of Nazareth truly lived and truly died under Roman crucifixion. That is a fact anchored in history and supported by multiple lines of evidence. What divides people is not his life or death, but the question of whether he truly rose again. For skeptics, it seems impossible. But for those who have examined the evidence, the historical case is stronger than many realize. The question now is not whether the evidence exists. It does. The question is what you will do with it. If this conversation sparked something in you, take time to examine the sources for yourself. Whether you end up believing or doubting, make sure your conclusion is based on evidence rather than assumption. Until the next one, keep seeking truth wherever it leads.